Hello, welcome to Chapter 8 Discussions. Last time we had Sandy and Jason recovering from being poisoned. Although technically they hadn't been poisoned, they had just been given a very strong, very powerful drink that would be reserved for supernatural mages that were very powerful. Much more powerful than Sandy and Jason are. So, technically not poisoned, sort of poisoned, you know. So Jason has figured out how to take care of the cobalt slug with Penny's help, and he's completely remade himself a new matrix. And there's been some adventure with Sandy, but at this point he doesn't know what that is. And so at the end of chapter 7, Jason is very tired, goes to sleep, and we pick up now on chapter 8. I woke up to the sound of mayhem. My wild child had decided it was time to play. And by play, I mean he tore across my bed in a full sprint, jumped off the bed, bounced off the wall, dashed across the floor, and climbed the armoire. "Bermuda," I hissed sleepily. "What the hell are you doing?" He sprang back onto the bed, eyes all wild, ears laid back. Then he dashed off into the bathroom. I groaned. Sometimes he just had way too much energy for me. I hurriedly summoned 2 feather dots, filled them with magic, but before I could send them off to occupy Bermuda, they popped. Do what? That had never happened before. I rubbed my eyes, waking up a bit more. Sure enough, both feather dots had exploded, showering my magic all over the room. What the heck? "Penny, my magic is in the air in this room," I said. "Do what you can to absorb it again. Meanwhile, I'll see why the feather dots exploded." "Of course," she said cheerfully. She never slept, so waking up was not a problem with her. She uncurled off my finger and levitated into the air. Then she flattened into a wafer-thin disc, almost a foot wide, and slowly started moving around the bedroom. Everywhere she went, she pulled my magic towards her and absorbed it. Confident that she was doing all right, I turned my attention back to making another feather dot. This time, I made just one of them, giving it my full attention, even though I'd gotten to the point where I could make these creations in my sleep. Bermuda was young and full of energy, and he needed his toys at all hours of the day and night. Feather Dot was basically a flying car, like a Lamborghini, so that part was easy. I gave Dot special tires that let him drive up walls, and doors that transformed into wings so he could fly. He had a bright red dot on his rear bumper that looked like a laser dot, and for the piece de resistance, I added some long semi-plume feathers sprouting off the roof. Bermuda loved to chase Feather Dot, and Feather Dot loved to be chased. It was a match made in heaven. I went over Feather Dot with my magic sight, adding in all the details, and then started filling it with magic. I stopped almost immediately. Before, I'd spend at least a minute filling him up. Bermuda was fast, and Dot needed all the magic he could hold. However, with the changes I'd made to myself last night, it seemed like now I could pour out a lot more power than before. I'd only spent maybe 2 seconds filling up Dot, but already he was bursting at the seams. Feather Dot was raring to go, so I turned him loose. He really had more magic than he can handle, so he was super duper fast, but Bermuda was up to the challenge. My bedroom became the new feline parkour course. Thank goodness there wasn't anything breakable in here. Balaji opened the door and poked his head inside. "Is everything all right?" he asked worriedly. "Everything's fine," I assured him. "Bermuda just has energy to burn. He'll get it out of his system in a bit." His eyes widened as he spotted Bermuda jumping onto the desk and then executing a huge 9-foot leap to the top of the armoire. He also gave a double take when he saw Penny floating around the room, but didn't say anything about it. I'm sure he's seen stranger things than a floating disc before. "Okay, if you're good, I'll leave you to it." He watched Bermuda play for a moment, clearly enjoying the show. "I also wanted to let you know I'm getting ready to head out. I need to clean up and get ready for the day." "Oh, is it morning?" I asked. I was used to either waking up with the sun or waking up to the alarm on my phone. That wasn't going to work here as it was always night and I didn't have my phone. Yes, he said with a smile. It's probably time for you to get up and get ready for the first house discussion. I've already talked with Sandy and she's awake and feeling well. Also, the house staff has left a breakfast tray out here for you to snack on. Thank you for the wake-up notice, I said. Will I see you later? Yes, he replied. We've already coordinated with Sandy and we'll be sitting in on the discussions with you today. Great, I said. I'll see you soon. He nodded and left, closing the door behind him. I gave a full-body stretch to wake up and then stayed in bed for another minute. I luxuriated in the feeling of warm sheets and the brief feeling of sleeping in. I loved a slow start to my morning. Bermuda ran over me again, and I sighed. My morning wasn't that quiet, so I might as well get up. Before I did, though, I spent a moment just feeling my magic. I didn't do anything with it. I just flexed it slightly. It felt responsive, powerful, and way stronger than before. I made a mental note to keep this in mind when I was making my little creations. Until I got used to the new flow, I needed to be extra careful about filling them up. I hopped out of bed to start my morning routine. It wasn't until I was in the shower that it occurred to me to check out my physical status. After all, the drink had attacked more than my matrix. I spent a long time in bed shaking to burn out the poison. Surely I should feel some effect from that? I rolled my shoulders, did a few twists, and even a couple squats. I should be feeling sore and sluggish, but I wasn't. Instead, I felt good. I felt wide awake and full of energy. This new body was fantastic. I was very grateful to T and his growth for all their work, but I still wasn't used to being this physically blessed. I was more of a mental type of guy. I like to solve stuff, figure things out, and learn new things. My idea of a good time was a book, a cat, and a cup of hot chocolate. I like to walk, so I was never out of shape, but I've never been what might be considered athletic either, at least until recently. When Tyler started teaching me to fight, I'd made tea with his healing room to help me recover from the intense practices faster, although tea had done a lot more for me than that. I'd ended up with the body that I thought was just perfect. It was the body of an Olympic athlete. I had powerful legs, a great core, strong chest, and well-rounded shoulders. I was fast, faster than anyone I'd seen so far, and I recovered really quickly. I looked and felt better than I ever thought was possible, and I was very grateful, especially on mornings like this. Satisfied that all was well on the physical side, I finished up my morning routine, got dressed, and walked into our greeting room. It was a good thing the room was mainly blue and white, because after the calm feeling of my bedroom, this room felt busy. Everywhere I looked had some sort of decoration or swirl. I liked a bit of detail and flourish, but this was just too much. Although in a weird way it woke me up even more, and I felt ready to head out and start our first day of discussions. One nice thing in the room that I really appreciated was the breakfast cart. It had plenty of food for 2 people, with cut fruit, bread and jam, biscuits and gravy, waffles and fried chicken. Someone must have thought we'd appreciate a southern breakfast, and they were not wrong. The food was real, but there was magic at work on the cart. I could see the faint glow of it surrounding the fare, and as I started eating, I discovered why. All the food was fresh. Not just sit under a heat lamp nice, but fresh. The biscuits tasted like they'd just come right out of the oven, and the gravy as if it had just come off the stove. The fried chicken on the waffles was crispy and juicy, and the waffles had the syrup baked in. I moaned. It was so good. Then I realized I should probably stop, as it sounded like I needed some alone time. But I moaned again anyway. It was so good. Sandy came out of her bedroom to see what all the fuss was about and made a plate for herself. Soon she was moaning too. I hadn't realized how hungry I was, but I guess all that activity last night had left me with a calorie deficit. For a while we were too busy stuffing our faces to talk. I was going back for a second plate when I saw the cart even had a dish made up for Bermuda. I put it on the floor, called for him, and he came out of the bedroom. He walked in all satisfied like, yeah, I showed that feather who's boss. He sniffed the dish, found its contents satisfactory, and started licking it up. It must have been really good, because when he finished, he spent several minutes just sitting there, licking his chops with a satisfied look on his face. Once we felt sated, Sandy and I sat back with a lovely cup of coffee and told our stories from last night. I told her all about the cobalt magic, what it felt like, and how I'd built my new matrix. I also told her about T, how he'd fixed up my physical side, and how good I felt this morning. "You are just amazing, Jason," Sandy said, shaking her head in wonder. "I love how you visualize magic and how your creations work for you. People are going to look at you and just see a spark, but you are already so much more than that." "Thank you," I said sincerely. "I have a good teacher that encourages me to experiment and try to be the best I can." I gave her a big smile to show I was meeting her, of course. Switching topics, though, what is a spark? I've heard people call me that, but it's just never been a good time to ask about it before now. A spark is one of the nicer terms for a brand new mage. It means that the spark of creation hasn't settled in yet. It means that the magic of creation hasn't even settled in yet. It's just a spark. A spark. So, how long is a mage considered a spark, I asked, and what comes after that? "You're considered a spark for the first 10 years, so you have a ways to go yet." Sandy settled into her teaching tone. "After that, you become a seed, and that goes until you're about 100. "So you're considered a seed?" I interrupted. Sandy nodded and kept going. "Next is root. That lasts until you're 1,000 years old. I think most people here at the gathering are at the root level. Sprout is 1,000 to 10,000 years old, and sapling goes all the way up to 30,000 years old." "That seems like a crazy jump in years between the levels," I said. "Are there mages running around here that are really that old? Why are most of the people here only roots? I know we are immortal, but I just never really thought about someone being 20,000 years old." "I thought the same thing," Sandy said, "so I did some research. I think this terminology started a long time ago when there were fewer people around. If you go back 2,000 years to 0 BC, there were only about 120 million people in the whole world. That's about the population of the Philippines. Because there aren't that many people, there wasn't that many supernaturals. This is just a guess, but I think the only way mages had to gain power was through gathering ambient magic. So the process to power up and get to a new level was a really long one. I think that is why there is such a big difference in years to get to the next stage. Currently, over the last 1,000 years, we've had a population explosion. So that is why so many of the mages we have here are at the root level. The growth of supernaturals hasn't been linear, it's been exponential, and it's still growing like crazy. With all the new supernaturals around, the danger to mages has increased, but so has the opportunity for growth. Now mages feed off each other rather than waiting hundreds of years to passively absorb magic." That sounded like a logical explanation. It also sounded very interesting. I made a mental note to Google world population over time when I got back to Louisville. "So what kind of system would you suggest?" I asked. Sandy had obviously given this a lot of thought. "I'm still relatively young, so I'm not sure this is really the best way, but I'd do something that doubles every level. So Spark would be up to 10 years, then the next level would be 20 years. I knew a lot more at 20 than I did at 10. Then the next level would be 40 years old. I know I felt a lot more confident and I had more power when I reached 40. After that would be 80, 160, 320, and then 640 years. The progression is logical and it just feels right. Doubling the number of years should make a mage twice as powerful and twice as effective." "That sounds like a good system," I agreed. "Have you told anyone else about this?" "Sure," she nodded. "I've told several people in House Chicago, and they all agree there should be a different classification. But almost nobody has agreed on what it should be." She gave a wry shrug. "I guess that's why there's no new system." I like Sandy's setup. It felt right to me too. Of course, the age of a mage wasn't the only way to gauge power, but it was probably a good rule of thumb. "I know we need to leave soon, and I know I've gotten off track, but tell me what happened with you last night," I said. "Are you okay today, physically and mentally? Physically and magically?" "I'm okay," she said, "although I've been transformed like you. She stopped for a minute, searching for the right words. Basically, John saved me. Amaya got me back to the room and I was messed up. I couldn't think. My magic wasn't responding well, and I had no idea what was wrong. I lay there for a while, feeling totally helpless. All I can remember is wishing John was there. I wanted him so badly. If he was there, then everything would be all right. I wished for him so much I could actually feel him. But it was in a way I hadn't felt before. It's like we were at the opposite ends of a narrow tunnel. I pulled him, and I felt like it should work, but it didn't. I could hear him sort of, and I think he could hear me. I kept trying, but I just couldn't connect. It was so frustrating. Finally, I just relaxed and felt like I was floating. I just couldn't think. That drink was too powerful, and that was how I made the connection in the end. Instead of trying to do something myself, I just let the connection come to me. It was the wedding rings that did it. I felt them line up somehow, and everything clicked. We were magically together again. Once we teamed up, the poison didn't have a chance. John showed me how to ground myself in the earth, and I let it have all the alcohol and whatever else was mixed in there. Her eyes lit up. It was the most amazing thing I've ever experienced. It was so peaceful. I felt grounded in a way I've never been grounded before. She paused again, searching for the words to convey what she'd experienced. I could hear the heartbeat of the earth. I could feel it like a baby feels its mother's heart. That's where the real peace comes from. There were no emotions, no drama, none of the normal noise I'm used to hearing. I slipped into harmony with this beat, and suddenly I was okay. John was still with me, so I felt safe. It wasn't like it was all quiet, though. There was a lot going on. I could feel life moving and churning on the surface. I could feel a huge amount of pressure down below. I could feel things move and shift and settle. I could feel my magic settling into that pressure, and then I could feel the magic in the drink pushing back. I linked with John, and we just pushed it out. It felt like drama and animosity, and I just wanted it gone. What I didn't realize is all that pressure created heat, and apparently we caught the bedroom on fire. Amaya said the bed went up in flames like it had been soaked in gasoline. So that was all the smoke I smelled, I said. Yes, she nodded. Amaya and Elizabeth freaked out, of course. They got the fire under control pretty quickly, but the bed was ruined and Elizabeth had to ask the house for a new one. I was still one with the earth, so I was okay. It burned off my clothes, but I was fine. That sounds insane, I gasped. Are you sure you're okay? Oh yes, Sandy replied. I've never felt better. Now I know why John spent so long talking to the earth. It is an amazing feeling. I really can't describe it accurately. It was a spiritual experience. Her eyes shone with wonder. She searched for the right words. Then she shook her head. I have no words. It was peace. It was grounding. It changed me physically and magically, and I'm still not sure what it means yet. I just know I feel amazing today. She got a happy smile on her face, and I can still feel John. She tapped her wedding ring. I still feel his love and support. He's not here physically, but it's like he's holding my hand. Oh, wow, I said, that is just beautiful. I jumped up and gave her a hug. I was so glad she was doing well, and it sounded like she was doing much better than well. She was doing great. So I know this is just the next morning and you are getting used to your changes, but tell me what's different, physically and magically. Do you still have a magic matrix? She shook her head. I don't think so. I think the magic in the drink ruined that. Now my magic feels like lava, and it has a flow to it, and it feels dense. My magic has felt off ever since I was drained by Isabel. Even mixing my magic with John didn't fix that. It has felt sluggish and slow to respond. This morning, though, it feels like it did before. Actually, it feels better than before. It feels powerful and eager. It feels like it's mine again, and believe me, that is an amazing feeling. And how are you feeling physically? I asked. That feels like a big change, too. I slept for so long after getting drained that I haven't felt like my old self physically. I felt slower and weaker even with John's power. Now, though, I feel great. This is going to sound weird, but when I was in touch with the earth, I gave it my impurities. What that means, I'm not exactly sure. I just felt like I had something holding me back, and now it's not anymore. I also felt I also felt the pure part of me that was left take over and start growing. Again, what that means, I'm not sure. She shivered a little bit and wrapped her arms around herself. She seemed tentative but excited and happy. I felt a new sense of life from her. This is going to sound corny, but I feel reborn. That's not corny, I said. That's amazing and wonderful and awesome. We laughed together, just sharing a moment of being alive and feeling remarkably healthy. This magic world I found myself in was scary. It could be cool too, though. We'd both survived and come out stronger for it. I was very happy about that. I could talk about this all morning, Sandy said, but we needed to get going. Are you ready? I think so, I replied. I gestured at my jeans and t-shirt. What is the dress code like? I've been told it is whatever is comfortable, Sandy said, which is a good thing since we are both down a set of clothes and comfortable is all we have left. And with that, we finished up and headed out. I thought Bermuda would stay back and sleep all day, but he made it very clear he was coming with me. So I put him on my backpack and he hopped inside. Just like when we were running together, he poked his head over my shoulder and enjoyed the view without having to do any of the work. Sandy navigated the halls again, and this time we decided to go at a light jog. Everyone either ran or glided or flew, so walking seemed extra slow. Even then, this house was so big it still took over 30 minutes to reach our destination. This time we were in a space that could have been a large classroom. Instead, it looked more like a playroom. I expected the seating to be in rows and the speaker to be at the head of the room, just like a regular presentation. Instead, there was a raised circular area in the middle of the room and lots of random seating arrangements around it. I say seating arrangements because they ranged from comfortable couches to recliners to beanbags to giant pillows. The ceiling was very high, at least 2 stories, and there were alcoves in the wall in case you wanted to fly up with a group of friends and cuddle up in a cozy nook. As I watched, a guy and 2 women did exactly that. They picked up a few pillows, floated up gracefully to an open alcove, and settled in and started chatting. There were already a couple hundred people in the room, and lots of seating was taken. I saw a comfortable couch down by the speaker's circle that was still open, and I was about to suggest we snag it when I noticed Amaya and Balaji sitting beside it. They noticed us at the same time and waved us over. We hurried over, said hello, and found out they had been saving it for us. We thought you'd need to be close to the speaker to hear, Balaji explained. Everyone here will probably listen to the speaker in whatever language they want with their bank stamp. That always makes these discussions feel loud and chaotic. Plus, you'll see maids arriving, leaving, getting food, and having totally unrelated conversations. So, since this is your first time and Sandy's here to learn all we can, we wanted you both to focus on the speaker as much as possible. That is very thoughtful, I said, and thank you for that. And thank you so much for taking care of me last night. I certainly appreciate it. I've slept a lot better knowing you were checking up on both of us. I gave him a big happy hug, and he just laughed and hugged me back. Then he put an arm around my shoulder while we were talking. The contact felt nice. And it felt, the contact kept me grounded and it felt nice. There wasn't anything sexual about it. He was just letting me know I could relax and be comfortable around him. He was creating a safe space, and that felt nice. Did you mention food? I asked. I was surprised to find that after everything I'd eaten this morning, I still wanted more. Amaya and Sandy stayed with the seats while Balaji and I headed to an alcove on the side where the snacks were. When I got there, I discovered all kinds of finger foods, similar to what we'd had the previous night, but without all the extra presentation. There were savory meats, breads, fruit, juices. Even though it was morning, there was also a full bar. I guess it's always 5 o'clock somewhere. All the food had the faint touch of magic, and it tasted so fresh and amazing. There was a centaur llama tending the bar and making sure the food was stocked up. I started making a plate as another centaur llama showed up with a cart of food and more booze. I wanted to say hi and ask about CL, but they both looked very busy. Instead, I just caught their eye and gave them a smile and a quick wave. We got back and I settled into the couch as Bermuda settled onto my lap. The couch was comfortable and I had snacks and my cat. Life was good. At that point, the speaker showed up and stepped up into the circle. There was a brief round of applause, and then the talk started. Sandy pulled out a notebook and pen, ready to take notes. I expected it to be more of a lecture, with talking points and maybe the magical equivalent of a PowerPoint presentation. Instead, it really was a discussion. The head basically talked about the issues she was encountering running her house. She covered both the good and the bad, things that she'd found worked, and then told funny stories about when it all fell apart. She was personable and relatable, and I found myself drawn into her world in the house. Occasionally, other mages stopped her to ask questions or to offer their own suggestions in areas she was struggling, which only added to the discussion-feeling atmosphere. It all seemed a bit chaotic to me, though, as there was a constant flow of people and conversations. People got up to get snacks and participate in other groups, or just leave the room and go somewhere else. There were also more people coming in all the time, and they would either join the main discussion or have one of their own. The house was being interpreted into several other languages, so there was a constant babble of sounds filling the air. I was so glad we were right by the speaker. I could see her clearly, hear what she was saying, and tune out all the other distractions. Sandy took notes and asked some questions of her own. I wasn't sure how long we were there, as there wasn't a clock in the room and I didn't have my phone, but at some point the speaker brought her talk to a close and stepped down off the circle. That was our signal to head to a different room. This time the discussion had already started, but two people from Amaya's house had saved us a spot. I got Sandy and Bermuda settled in, and then went to get some more snacks. There were 2 centaur llamas in this room, and again they were too busy to talk. I handed Sandy a drink, some food, and we settled in for another learning experience. We followed that pattern for 4 more discussions. I guess the word got out because the speakers seemed to know we were coming. They seemed to face us more than the rest of the mages, and they always answered Sandy's questions quickly and thoroughly. I think maybe it felt nice to have someone pay attention to what you're saying and wanting to learn from you. The main thing I got from the discussions was that the houses were struggling with the expectations of their newer mages. If you went back a couple hundred years, the newer mages were in awe of the houses. They had indoor plumbing, light, heat, and good food. It was a major step up from their current living conditions. The newer mages, though, were used to all that. We already had hot water, electricity, central air, and fine dining. New supernaturals now wanted Wi-Fi to watch shows, electricity for TVs, and cell coverage for their phones. Most of the older mages weren't even sure what a router or laptop even was. All of this would have been a major curiosity of the modern age, except for one big thing. There were a lot of new mages. The second speaker summed it up best. She said it had taken the world thousands and thousands of years to reach our first population of 1 billion people. That was in the year 1804. It had taken just 12 years to go from 6 billion to 7 billion. When a new mage gets welcomed to a house, the tradition has been that everyone gives up some of their magic to create Morphos points and form a new room for the arrival. This worked well when the residents were only asked to donate every 10 years or so. Now they were being asked to give every couple of months. Since being a supernatural is all about growing in power, this didn't sit well with the older mages. I didn't hear any real solutions to the problem, and I wasn't sure there was one. More supernaturals meant more space needed, which meant more magic. There wasn't any getting around that. It made me think about my own space. Had John and Sandy provided the magic for my starter apartment? And what about Annabeth? Our house was so new, but maybe that was an advantage when it came to technology. We were already set up with electricity, cell service, and internet access. Any new supernaturals coming to our house would feel right at home. I didn't bother Sandy with these thoughts right now, as there was plenty of time to talk this through when we got back home. Instead, I just made sure Sandy was comfortable, had snacks and drinks, and could give her full attention to the speaker. I didn't take notes, but I paid attention to the discussion and remembered most of what was said. I wasn't only taking care of Sandy, I was taking care of Bermuda too. He decided this was the perfect day for love and snuggles and demanded I pay attention to him at all times. Sometimes I held him in my arms like a baby. Sometimes he rested between my shoulders and the couch and tickled my ear with his paw. One time he laid on his back on my lap, all four legs in the air and head hanging straight off my knees. It looked like he didn't have any bones in his neck, but somehow it was still cute as hell. He purred as I rubbed his tummy until he fell asleep. We were on our third discussion when he got up and left for a while. Initially, I wasn't too worried about him, as he seemed capable of moving about the house however he wanted. As time passed, though, I started to get apprehensive. Finally, he showed up with a telltale sign of kitty litter on his paws and fish on his breath. Even cats need to go to the bathroom and get a snack. Balaji stayed with us the whole time, but Amaya got pulled aside a lot. As the day wore on, I realized she was a pretty important person. I guess that made sense as she was the head of a large house. That made it all the more special that she was spending time with us. It was a great day of learning, but I was glad when it finally wound down and we headed back to our suite. Bermuda seemed tired too. He'd napped and loved a lot, but just when he was started to settle into a good deep sleep, we'd end up moving to the next discussion. I had read somewhere that cats need 18 hours of beauty sleep a day, and he was way behind. When I got back to my bedroom, he crawled up on the bed and passed out. I gave him a goodnight kiss and then freshened up for the banquet. I'd snacked all day, so I wasn't really hungry, but a banquet still sounded nice. I was always up for good food. I brushed my teeth and was washing my face when I heard a knock on my bedroom door. That seems curious because Sandy was the only one in the suite with me, and everyone else would have knocked on the main door. When I opened the door, I got a happy surprise. It was CL. "Oh my gosh," I exclaimed. "How are you?" I didn't give him time to answer before giving him a big hug. "Come on in." I got out of the way so he could step inside. "I didn't expect to see you for a few days at least." When T worked on me, it usually took at least 3 days for the spores to do their work. "Your magic really threw me for a loop," he laughed. "I believe the English phrase is tripping balls. At one point, I thought I was on a cornflake boat trying to paddle upriver on a stream of milk so I wouldn't get eaten by a giant with no teeth. I thought I could handle it, but I was very wrong." "That's quite okay," I said. "I had a lovely meal of cat food one time when I was healing. I also discovered I have an inner drag queen that likes to come out and play. She's a real hoot and likes to play pranks on me. Anyway, other than going on a dairy adventure, how are you feeling?" "I feel great," he said with a big smile. "Actually, that doesn't cover it. I feel amazingly, awesomely, fantastically wonderful." To show it off, he reared up on his hind legs and pawed the air in excitement. I was shocked. That more than anything said how good he was feeling. Before, his arthritis had made it painful for him to sit down, much less do a happy dance. "Well, I'm very glad to hear that." I waved him down. "Now stand still for a second while I check you out." I didn't just need my magic sight to see he was doing better. Before, his coat had been streaked with gray and had a flat, matte sort of finish. Now his coat shone in the light and had a healthy glow. The gray wasn't gone, but I could already see some dark hair growing in. Before, his eyes looked wise and tired. Now they shone with life and excitement. I felt like before he'd been Gandalf the Grey. Now he was Gandalf the White and ready to kick some Balrog ass. I switched over to my magic sight, and the change was even more profound. All of his arthritis was gone, every last bit of it. In its place, he now had healthy bones, joints, and ligaments. His muscles were fuller, stronger. His veins were thicker, and his blood moved smoother. He no longer looked old. Instead, he looked like he was in the prime of his life. This was so far beyond what I thought was possible. I'd hoped he would feel better and move easier. I'd hoped he could roll back the years a bit and give him a nice, comfortable old age. Instead, he was now powerful, fit, and strong. It had only been a day, but T and his grove had worked a miracle. I had a strange feeling at that moment. This shouldn't be possible for me. I was just a baby mage, and my power on its own wasn't anything that could do this. It was my little creations, coupled with the powerful healing rune that was creating this wonder. It was the Ents that mapped out his body, figured out what to do, and the best way to do it. They were supercharged by natural expression of the healing rune. I'd taken the rune and figured out how to change it from just lines to something that flowed. T had taken that extra step and changed the healing rune into the flowers that grew all over his body. This fusion of soul fragment and natural rune was the real star of the show. Even so, this healing felt like it was at a grandmaster level. I had heard Sandy and Annabeth talk about their healing charms, and while they sped up healing, they didn't create anything like this. CL was a whole new level of healthy. He wasn't just healed, he was fixed, and in every way possible, and it all happened in about a day. I'd stumbled onto something amazing, and I think I liked it. I liked the thought of being a healer. "Thank you," I said to the two tree Ents inside him. "You have done a wonderful job, just wonderful. I'm so proud of you." They bowed deeply and then settled back into their rest position. There wasn't anything else for them to work on, so they were just chilling. Both Ents still had plenty of power, and both gem cell batteries were half full. I decided to leave them alone. If they had done all this with the half a charge, then they would still have plenty of magic left for basic maintenance. "You look great," I told CL. "It looks like your body has been given a complete clean and refresh. I guess all your cleaning karma came back around and got you all fixed up." "It's more than just karma." He gave me a deep bow, then swept into a full bow, both arms swinging all the way back. "Thank you so much." It looked like he was going to tear up. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." His sincerity touched me, and it felt so real I was a bit embarrassed. My first instinct was to brush it off and make light of it, but I didn't want to do that. It was a big deal for him. He had a new body, and it was a big deal for me. I had no idea before this that I could make such a big impact on someone other than me. Now I knew I had a major affinity for healing. I wanted to use it to make the world a little better. I settled for giving him a big hug. It ended up being bigger than I thought as he swept me up in the air and gave me a hugga shugga bugga wugga wugga hug. It said everything he was trying to say, and I loved it. When he put me back down again, it felt complete. And now it was time to move on. "I'm so glad you're doing okay, but I have to finish getting ready for the banquet tonight," I said. "Yes," he replied, "that's why I'm here. I've talked to the staff here, and they have been given me the responsibility to make sure you're ready for all the events here at the gathering. I've heard about what happened at the welcome party, and I'm here to support you at the service level. We are not mages, but we can still do a lot." "I have no doubt about your abilities at all," I said sincerely, "and I'm certainly grateful for any support you can provide." I was touched by the gesture, but in this case I could already dress myself, so I wasn't sure how he could help with that. It was always nice to have a second opinion before heading out the door, though. I wanted to look good, even if I didn't have any fancy clothes. "Very good," he said, and he sounded a bit like a butler. I was going to laugh it off until he opened up the armoire and pulled out a suit. It wasn't my old suit, not at all. This was a suit with presence, flash, and style. It was a deep sapphire blue and trimmed in emerald green. Those were my signature colors, and although the trim made it a bit over the top, I loved it. It also came with an emerald green shirt, green socks, and shiny green dress shoes. Wow! "I love this," I told CL as I started getting dressed. "I think this is the fanciest outfit I've ever worn. I do have a concern, though. While I love how beautiful and vibrant this is, it feels more like a costume than a regular suit." CL just chuckled. "Trust me, young master. Once you get there, you will fit right in." I still had a few reservations, but I set them aside and just went with it. It wasn't like I had any real alternative. My old suit wasn't anywhere near in the same league as this new one, as far as quality and fit. Once I was completely dressed and standing in front of the mirror, I had to admit I loved it. I looked dashing, positively dashing. Most of the suit was sapphire blue, and that is what made it work. It was such a deep color that it anchored the emerald green perfectly. "This suit is fantastic," I told CL. I couldn't tear my eyes away from the mirror. I looked that good. "How on earth did you find this and get it here in time?" "Oh, I didn't buy it. My niece made it," CL said proudly. "For real?" I asked, still preening in the mirror. "How on earth does she make it in less than 1 day? And how did she know the colors to use?" "I spoke with Master Sandy about the colors. After I saw you unpack, I knew you would need some new outfits for the event, and I told my niece about it before I completely lost my mind to your healing magic. She took it from there." "Well, she is a miracle worker," I said. "I absolutely love it." I couldn't help myself. I gave a twirl in front of the mirror. I looked slim yet powerful. I looked like a magical James Bond. My suit fit that well. I wish Tyler could see me now. He'd seen me at my worst, so it was only fair he saw me at my best. I'd have to give him a personal fashion show when I got home. Before I headed out, CL pulled out his feather C250 and gave me a final dusting. It got rid of a few micro wrinkles and whisked away the cat hairs that had settled in. We'd only been here a little over a day, and somehow Bermuda still managed to get cat hair on my new suit. I headed out into our waiting area, and a few minutes later, Sandy joined us. To my surprise, she was wearing a brand new outfit too. It was a cross between a cocktail dress and a full, elegant gown. The front was cut up to the knees, showing a bit of leg and making it easy to move. The back hung lower and flared out, giving her a lovely sense of movement and drama. It cinched at her waist, staying low in the back, and rose in the front to perfectly accent her breasts. The color was light and dark gray, just like John's magic, but when the light caught it right, the dress sparkled with orange fire. She looked so amazing I was speechless for a moment. Her eyes twinkled and she gave a twirl and then struck a pose. The dress was perfectly Sandy, but an elegant and vibrant Sandy I hadn't seen before. If I was James Bond, she was Lady Bond. She looked beautiful and refined and somehow badass all at the same time. "Wow," I breathed. "Just wow." "You clean up nicely yourself," Sandy said playfully. "Can you imagine if John was here and saw you in this dress?" I laughed. "His eyes would be popping out." "You think?" Sandy twirled. Her long black hair hung loose in the back, and she looked like she'd been lifted from the cover of a romance novel. Of course, she still wore her charm bracelet and necklace, and they tinkled lightly as she moved. "For sure," I nodded. "If he was here right now, I don't think you'd be going to the banquet because he'd be carrying you back to the bedroom." "That is probably true," Sandy laughed. "I married a lusty man." Her eyes got a little dreamy. "And I love him very much." "Speaking of lusty men," she continued, "I'm thinking Tyler would be carrying you back to your bedroom, too. You look amazing, Jason." "What? This old thing?" I preened, and we both laughed together. I really wish Tyler was here. "Does CL's niece make your dress, too?" I asked. Sandy nodded. "I have no idea how she did it. It fits perfectly, and the style and colors fit me to a T." She shook her head in wonder. "This is a level of magic that is beyond simple creation. This is art filled with passion. You have to love what you do in order to make outfits like this in such a short period of time." CL finished up with whatever he was doing in my bedroom and came out to join us. Sandy continued to rave over her dress, and he accepted all the compliments with pride. He obviously doted on his niece and loved her work. "Is there any chance she might be able to stop by?" Sandy asked. "I'd love to meet her and thank her in person." CL shook his head sadly. "I'm afraid not. She has difficulties walking, and the traffic in our hallways moves swiftly. Not as swiftly as your hallways where you fly, but still it moves fast. Everyone has something to do and some place to be. She has a certain area she can move around safely, but outside of that, she can cause a bit of a jam and she tires easily." "I'm so sorry to hear that," Sandy said. I made a mental note to talk about her later with CL. Maybe my aunts could do something for her. Not to worry, CL said. As you can see, she has found other ways of expressing her talents. Lots of us can walk well, but very few of us are clothesmiths of her caliber. He sounded smooth and reassuring, like he'd said this hundreds of times before, but I thought I detected a note of worry. I underlined my mental note to talk to him about this later. For now, we needed to get to the banquet, so we said our goodbyes and headed out. And that is the end of this chapter, and we will have a very exciting next chapter. See you guys next week.